Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about Ssangsu Geombup Samban, Form 3, Part 2. You know the spiel. I'm wearing this uniform not because the form is not canonical, but because my interpretations are not necessarily going to be. Again, when something is canonical, I'll give it a mention. However, most of this is my own interpretation over the past almost 20 years kind of playing with these forms. So this is just a lot of my own brain juices kind of producing reasons and explanations. So from here, we just did our center cut. We're going to draw it back, straight to the left, and then we're going to do a parry, diagonal, into a center cut. I'll do that so it's actually facing you so you can kind of see the angles a little bit more. So we just did our center cut, draw it back, draw directly to your left, and you're going to pivot 1, 2, 3. So this has also changed throughout the years, very minorly, but minor enough that it introduced some interesting ideas. We'll get into the back and left in a little bit. Let's talk about that pivot first. So the way it is right now, I think it'd be easier to see from here, is essentially you prepare that sweeping 11 block. You're going to essentially pivot on the right foot, and essentially, like as a rigid body, move 90 to your right, or pi over 2 to your right, sweep, cut into that center cut. So what I encourage you to try is first, try that. So let me actually show you another way to do it, an alternative way that is not canonical, is the way that I was originally taught it. I like it, and there's ways you can kind of like play around it a little bit. So instead of prep, pivoting on that front foot to cut, noticing the tempo is supposed to be 1, 2. As I'm landing my back foot, that cut is coming in, right? So as opposed to the way that I originally learned was you're going to step forward, so a little bit on the 45 here, and you're going to use your hips to pivot, right? So the idea is I step forward, I see a cut coming in, for example. I'm going to use my hips to parry, cut, and then slide forward in for that center cut. So I highly recommend you try both ways first to see what vibes, right? So there is a canonical way and there's one that has a little more power. I think the happy medium between the two is sort of where you'll get a little bit more, bang for your buck, so to speak. Now, which one you do is kind of dependent upon how you interpret what's going on, right? So if I just did this, I'm backing up, and I see someone here, I'm like, oh no, you're giving me a center cut. I would want something pretty fast, right? So the canonical way to do it is pretty fast. So like 1, 2, and I can draw in with that counter. Pretty nice, right? Versus if I do step pivot, that is going to give me more power with the sweeping block, and it's not going to have any augmented power from a turn for that diagonal, but it's going to give me, again, a stable foundation to block from. However, the way that I interpret it and the way I'm going to kind of justify it, right? We just cut someone. If that person is done, right? Why will I slide back, slide left, still facing that direction, and then something's going to happen up here, right? So versus just by the networking of, or like the geometry of that form, it insinuates that person is still active, right? Whether it can be maimed or whatever from that center cut, whatever. But I'm here, probably too close, because if I was close enough to throw a cut either to the wrist or to the head, I'm now in danger because now I'm within their wrist or head cutting distance. So going back, defense, again, that's a fast motion. This one's a slow motion, right? However, so if I'm here, I'm going straight to the left. either they're moving to their right and we're just kind of mirroring each other. So to kind of give you another kind of a fun perspective. So if I'm here, I'm just kind of like, right? A little bit weird, right? However, there's a motion that's going to happen later in the form that you can kind of reinterpret this a little bit. So again, forms like 90-degree angles, or they like 45-degree angles. Again, makes it easier to teach as opposed to like, oh, go slightly to your left, but not too far to your left. However, an idea of reclaiming distance without triggering them to automatically attack is a really important thing here. So if I'm here, sliding straight back is good for me to get back into the defense, but it's very likely that they're going to try to follow up that attack, especially if I do slide back. There's that idea, that instinctual like, oh no, I'm running away, that you're going to try to come for me. So that quick defense, if that's fast enough, that might kind of stifle their initial response. It's a very fast and short motion, so you might be able to get away with that, especially because it's coming from a walking stance back into a walking stance, very, very fast motions, right? However, if I'm just like this way, so granted, moving to your left isn't necessarily going to trigger them to do anything, but they're going to be a little bit confused, right? Versus if I'm here, so in reality, not in the form, and I move off on an angle this way, that's actually going to give me a little bit more distance from my opponent to myself without fully like triggering anything, right? Because if I was fighting you and I kind of move off this way, maybe move off this way, and this way, it's very smooth and it's very subtle how I'm getting back my distance, right? So potentially that's something that we could be doing, right? We cut, oh no, I didn't finish it, quickly back in defense because staying that down here unless we know what you're doing can be kind of dangerous. From here, I slide back. Now we're in good distance again. Now I can maybe try to do some countering maneuvers. So a few ways you can also interpret that diagonal from that situation, that sweeping block, right? So let's just say I did do, I'm trying to figure out the best direction for this. Let's say, it's going to look really, is that right? Yes, this is the direction I will be. So from here, I would center cut, slide back, slight angle to get back my distance, and now we're in a good distance. Theoretically, one interpretation, not canonical, is just to use the back of your sword to shove it down, shove their sword down, and then counter, right? Essentially get rid of their sword. I would probably aim for their wrist and then head, again in that very quick succession. So in the form, if we're engaged with each other, now if we're too close, for example, this is obviously bad for both of us unless you really like the close range. So if I suddenly just move backwards, that's a trigger for him to probably just go forward. So now that I'm kind of open, he can just like stab me around the eye, right? So if we're here in the form, we go straight back, probably triggering that counterattack and moving over to the left side. However, that reinterpretation I would like for you to try, and we're going to go this angle so you can hopefully see a little bit better. So if we're really close, by going off on a circular angle here, we're going to naturally get further and further away as we suddenly get at this distance. So we kind of like just turn from here. Let's try a different angle as well. And from here, if we're close, and if I just move off on angle, on angle, on angle, suddenly, without doing like too much to kind of like trigger a reaction, we're going to be at a safer distance for us to kind of re-engage and pre-fence again. Another interpretation is on here, again drawing back, so there should be a center cut, draw back, defense, and doing to the left. Again, that left motion could still be that turn from here. If they're still mostly in front of me, maybe they're following through with a cut. I'm intercepting their center cut in front of me here. I'm going to move around them. So again, if this is essentially where they are, move around them, deflect their center cut, turn, cutting them from the side now, and then following up with a center cut to the face, right? So that's another way you can kind of interpret this, is they're coming in with that cut. You can do a 1, 2, 3, right? So moving around target as opposed to just overtly going for the strike. So playing with the two variants of that sweeping block, right? So the first variant is, if I see that cut coming in from the side, I'm simply going to pivot, and if he's obviously going to murder me, he's going to be in good distance there. It's a pivot as I come in 1, 2, 3, right? However, so that is going to be faster and more emphasis on the diagonal cut. So again, if he comes in with that shot, I really want to be fast here, 2 and 3, versus the other variant, when we step off to the side and use our hips to really shift and really power through that block. So if I'm here and I see him coming in, I can smack and then cut through and cut through. Now obviously if I want to, that diagonal cut could actually be aiming for his head, but I'm also trying not to be too bad to Mr. Kopp here. Hopefully having someone to actually show what these combinations are doing is helping. So now that I'm working in more places, I have a little bit more resources to kind of utilize, right? So obviously thank you, Mr. Kopp, for assisting with that demonstration. So hopefully those are helpful. But yeah, with that, make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training.